Welcome to today's webinar hosted by responsAbility. I'm Luise Ammerschuber, and it's a great pleasure to be here with you today to host this conversation. I'm here with Rochus Mommartz, who's the outgoing CEO of responsAbility. You have 35 years of experience in impact investing globally with a focus on sustainable investment in emerging markets. And I think with all this experience, you're the best person really to have this conversation with. Thank you for all of the questions that you submitted. We've tried to integrate it as many as possible today. And Rochus, it is such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I'm looking forward to hear more about your experience, your lessons learned, and also some of the next steps.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So 9 years as the CEO. When you think about your journey, is there one word of how you could describe it? And why do you choose that word?
If you allow me, 2 words instead of one. First word which comes into my mind is people. Just asset management or working in the field of impact, and it's all about people. And having the opportunity to build teams, to work together with very smart, interested, curious people. It's the first thing which is, I think, most important in what we are doing. And that means people in the company, but of course on the ground also. And the second word is, learning. Why learning? Because still, yes, impact investment or microfinance or investments in emerging market with a certain purpose is looking back now on some history, but still we are pushing the frontier. And that means one has to be a bit courageous, curious to see, and pushing that frontier means also there is learning all the time, which I think describes it best.
I think these are some great terms. How did you actually get into this field, like impact investing, a combination of finance and development? Was there a particular moment, an experience, or maybe even a person that got you into it?
So 35 years back, I was working in academics at university level. And I really have to admit, if you allow me to say, I didn't really know where to go. And then it was an opportunity given to me for consultancy work for 6 months to work in Latin America, to look at that time we said, credit granting NGOs. That was the term used at that time, to look at them and to do an assessment of 40 institutions in Latin America. And I said, yes, so it's very interesting. I didn't speak Spanish yet, so I had to learn it on the go. And at the moment then, when we started to do that work, traveling across Latin America, visiting the institution, the most decisive moment was being with final beneficiaries, so with the people. And once you are, so to say, as we say, in the field or with the people, and you allow yourself to listen to the people, just what is their perspective? That was for me a very decisive moment, because I understood what a difference a relatively tiny thing can make to the lives of people.
It's extremely impressive to see, and especially if you didn't speak Spanish yet.
Yeah, I learned, I have to say.
Yes.
After 6 months, my Spanish was okay, I have to say.
Yeah,
but it was...
Yeah. But like with all of these trips, you must have had some really unusual or also funny experiences there. Can you give us one of the anecdotes?
You can imagine. There is, over the many years, in so many countries, going through all type of challenges, political challenges, or all type of situation. Funny to visit. Is it fine? Yes, one thing which comes into my thumb, we were flying. We had to visit an institution in the Amazonas, and we were flying there with a very small plane, and we suddenly found out that the pilot is sleeping. Yeah, is it funny? I don't know whether it's funny. Yeah, but it certainly was a moment where everybody, the 5 people on that small plane, we were all shocked. But he was not, he was just sleeping. Yeah, so, and it all ended fine. But no, there are a lot of moments which of course, when I go back to the memories, there we won't have the time here to go into that. But yes, I think. But instead of saying, oh, yes, there are these things which are standing out, just to see all of these people, the beneficiaries, the micro entrepreneurs, but also the countries. So they want to progress. Yeah. And that, when I sit back right now and I think about it, this is what sticks most. Yeah. So and they want to be a partner. They don't want to get grants, so to say. They want to be in business with us. It's a globalized setup.
We've all seen when you go on a trip, a field visit, it is extremely impactful. The things that you see, and you've shared a bit already about it. Was there a particular moment where you felt the impact that microcredits have the most vividly?
Yes, this is really, and it goes back to individual encounters with a person, a group of women, a family on the ground. Because when you sit in their small hut together with them, and you just are in a conversation and try to understand what it means for them, very tiny amount of money. So we are talking about in group loans, we are talking about $50, $100. Some more advanced micro entrepreneurs might be $1,000. So, but still, in our perspective, so these are relatively tiny amounts. But then the key word is opportunity. Having access, in this case, to financing, to credit, or not having access. And what does it do with the people? So with a mother running a small business and then having, I have the $80, now I can buy books for the school for kids. And I don't have to say that I can do this. That makes a big difference. Yeah. So that's for me the most decisive. Still today, when I wake up and I think after 35 years, why I'm still excited about it, because I know there are not millions of people, many people are still getting this opportunity, which they otherwise wouldn't have, makes a big difference.
It is absolutely touching to see every time again and again, no matter what country we're in. Yeah. Also, one of the things I find very impressive about microcredits is when you look at extreme times like pandemics or economic catastrophes, or they have been extremely resilient. Why do you think that is? And how do we adapt microcredits as well to still serve customers in those difficult times?
Oh, yeah. There are probably two aspects to this, or many, but let's concentrate there. And you can imagine this is one of the questions when we started with responsAbility 20 years back. One of the most heard of questions from investors, kind of, is it super risky? It must be super risky to go to these countries and financing. So the informal economy, if I'm allowed to say so. So why is there resilience? Because now we know from the track records there is resilience. But why is it? The resilience comes from as an investment topic, because these people on the ground, the final beneficiaries, are exposed all the time to real challenges. Yes. They have to, if you want, they have to develop a surviving spirit, and life continues. Yeah. And you have this aspect that people who are receiving this money, they know this is a very great opportunity for them. Whatever the circumstances are, they continue to work. They have to, because there's no option. There's no social security system. So they have to continue. And they also know it's also important, to keep themselves in the business, because life continues. They want also to get access to a loan tomorrow. That's one. So really the circumstances of these people and their life circumstances are one important part. The second is in investment, diversification. There are millions of people. So if you want to, the investment risk is very broad, distributed across many people. And that results in that when we look from an investment perspective, as an investment topic, to microcredit or microfinance, they say, overall, the investment topic shows a very high level of resilience.
It's a super interesting point, how the local resilience feeds into the resilience of microcredits in general. Absolutely. Yeah. But since I've heard about microcredits, I think that's like 2 decades ago or longer.
Okay.
One thing that people have always criticized is that people are at risk at going into higher debt, over indebtedness, basically, through the microcredits. What do you say to these critics?
First, absolutely. it is a duty, an obligation of each microfinance institution. We call microfinance banks, as they are most of them banks these days, after 20 years, as also us as the investor, to look deeply into what can we do to mitigate this potential risk. The risk is out there. When you give a loan to a person who probably never in her or his life had a loan, even if it's $100 loan, you have a responsibility. You have to make sure that the person understands the concept what a loan is and also can put the money to work to be able to pay back. This is summarized in what we would call, technically speaking, lending technology. So the way how an institution works, a microfinance institution. Without going to the details there, that's a very big part now when we as asset manager meet them on the field, on the ground. So our people, they have to analyze deeply and to understand how is this done, because it has to be done in the appropriate way to mitigate or avoid that problem. That's one very important part. And can this be done in a way to really try to avoid it nearly completely? Yes. Nevertheless, a single institution is not alone in the market. So there can be other institutions, and then the same family might receive a loan from a second or third provider. You might end up in a situation, even if you have a very good process in place, but now the person is in trouble. There's a problem. Then the next question is, how do I, as an institution, how does the institution deal with the situation? That's very important. And this is for us, these are two important criteria when we decide, can we invest in a microfinance institution? The answer to these two questions, what are their lending practices, and how do they deal with when people get into trouble, so to say? And there are better ways and worse ways. So we of course want institutions who have the best approach to this to minimize this inherent problem.
Yeah, excellent. And how do you see the market in Switzerland now? Because often it's still seen as a niche. And from what we can observe, a lot of wealth managers are actually more hesitant, although microcredits would be an obvious choice, especially in a sustainable market. And there's a huge increase in demand for sustainable products as well. But still, a lot of wealth managers don't choose it as a product.
Yeah, there are various trends out there. Of course, now when I compare 20 years ago, when we started, as a company explaining the concept in the market, it was new. Basically, my job or our job for Revela was just educating the market. What is it? What are we talking about? Now we are 20 years later. Industry has grown. Very often is positive that people say, oh, now I'm familiarized. I understand this. Some critical points came up, which had been there also before, but they are more prominent there. But many investors these days they know the topic and say, but we would like to do something more innovative. And I end up very often in discussions with people, and I think I understand where it comes from. It's also human nature. Oh, let's do a new thing. We have been doing this, those who have been doing this, but it's important to understand the challenge remains. So it's not like now it's gone. So it is still, for many people, the difference in their life. And investors should keep in mind, it's actually positive that we can be highly impactful these days. And at the same time, we have track records. So we have, financially speaking, much better picture of what we are getting in. So people should even get much more confident in saying, okay, now it's actually the right time to invest into the topics. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. There's still a long way to go.
Yeah, sure. When you look at the most recent economic developments, how does it affect microcredits in general?
Oh, look, there are so many economic developments. Yeah, of course, people look these days at emerging markets. There's many questions on currencies, and so tariffs. I don't even go into that topic because that still, again, try to understand. Most of the people, many of the people, through microfinance, which are finance, it's local business activity. yes, there are micro entrepreneurs who do also exports. It exists, but most of these tiny companies, this local economy. So forget about many connections, yes, on the international scene and all these flows. It impacts these people, but more indirectly, not so directly. There can be times where it is better and where it's worse. But as I said early on, when you asked the question on resilience, that's what people are familiarized with. Yeah. So it impacts people on the ground, but it doesn't change the fundamental investment thesis. The investment thesis continues to be the same.
When you look at our market right now, let's look a little bit more into the future. Where do you see some of the market opportunities and also the chances, especially for investors that want both the financial return as well as a proper impact?
Yeah. I would like first, it's very important because you say investors, one has to differentiate a bit. One is that private people like us, we want to invest. The good news is the opportunity is there. There is the opportunity to invest. There are products available. People can invest in this type of product. That's very good. And the opportunity for the people on the ground has to be created. So it's highly impactful, very good. When it comes to more institutional investors, so larger investors, then the opportunity is actually more interesting right now compared to years ago because scale. It's very often when you talk to a large pension fund, they say, yeah, but we are interested in your topic, but we would like to do at least an investment of, let's say, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million. That can be done these days. 20 years ago, it was more difficult because the scale was not at the same level as it is today. So we achieved that scale, which is very important for institutional investors. And I mentioned earlier, track record. So the data is there. And I would like to add one additional element these days, which hasn't been there also like 10 or 15 years ago. There is also the opportunity for larger investors to even influence the topic even to their needs. For example, I give you an example. There are some people who say, we like the topic, but we don't like it so just generically. Could we focus more on rural institutions? Because there is a scale right now. This opportunity is there. You can build portfolios also according to specific needs of institutional investors. So I think, you see, I'm using the word opportunity. Yes, there is now a very broad range of opportunities for investors out there, which I think is a good situation.
And I'm curious, when you look at your past career, what has been one of the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome it?
Oh, there are many. And I sometimes say, we should do a webinar just on failures or something. I say, no, there are many really challenges. You know, in growing a company, like, being, first I was head of private equity, then I took over 9-10 years ago as CEO. It's people. Yeah, we have to build teams and that's an ongoing. It's a beautiful thing, but of course, it also has its challenges there. And no, there's no specific answer to how to overcome. I think it's a continuous process there. Industry is more mature. Yeah, that's another challenge. Coming from a more startup and relatively immature industry into a setup much more formalized. So I had to learn how important certain parts of the formalizations are, regulations are. Yeah, we are financial intermediaries, so of course regulation plays a big role, and we had as an organization also to adjust to this. So these are, I think, typical challenges, which not only for us, for many people out there.
Yeah. When you think about one thing that you actually say, like, hey, that was a huge success of my career, something you're especially proud of?
Oh, what we really, we dared over the years, to launch some products where I say, wow, this really innovative. Found the right investors for doing this. So there are a couple of points, in the company history where I say, wow, we are, I personally, but as a team, as a company. So we are very proud about this. Overall, of course, Nobody would have, when we started, thought about ever make it $1 billion asset under management. And so we never, it was not in our mindset. So we thought, no, this is out of reach. Now looking back, that we also have been contributing to an industry development as a company. I think that is something which makes a company very proud in demonstrating scale is feasible. You longevity is, you can be there, for the long run. You can develop a product range, all of that.
And if you could give one tip from the bottom of your heart right now to the next investor, somebody who wants to get involved in microcredits and financial inclusion, sustainable finance, what tip would you give to that potential investor?
I think generally when you do investments, I think it's important to understand the core. What does a certain product or approach do? How does the money flow? What does it mean? So, and try to understand it from the perspective also of, in this case, the people who we want to open up a new opportunity. That makes the biggest difference.
This is such a good tip, because just talking to a person, I think my first time was probably I was 18 or something like that. And the first stories I heard, the first comment, absolutely insane. The impact it doesn't just have on the person, but also their family, often the community as well, because if they're more stable, they pass it on basically, they help others. And then also for the future generations, of course. Yeah.
Completely. No, I can just, if one has an opportunity to speak to somebody, and there are plenty of people these days who have experience on the ground. And so that is, I would recommend always the very first step forward.
And a little fun question for you. If you had not become CEO of responsAbility, if you had not gone into impact investing in general, what other career track would you have taken?
Oh, I like mathematics a lot. If I would be more talented, I probably could have been in mathematics, but I found out when I studied that, I have some talent, but I think that was not good enough for really being in this. But I like the topic very much. So I could see myself there. There are other topics. I also, when I was younger, I was very, very strongly involved and open for art. I like many things in that area, and philosophy is also a topic which is very, so there could be many things. It's always interesting how you end up in a certain area. So in my case, it was, yes, there were certain opportunities available, and I said, I'm a curious person. I said, okay, let's have a look. And so I went step by step, and here I am.
And my last question to you, if you could give just like some words to the next generation of investors, also here at responsAbility, but also in general, what would you say?
There are these challenges out there. I think investors, I can only say, which we said over many, many years, investment cannot fully tackle the world is more complex. So one should not be naive on that. It's not like we, with our investments, solve all of this. That's not the right statement. But investment can contribute positively to these developments and can make a difference for many people in this country. And I think investors should really, even in light of trouble and problems and challenges out there, keep that focus and say, okay, here in my overall allocation, for example, if investors think about that, of course this is not the only thing I'm doing, but these days there are these opportunities. I think investors should keep this in mind and should also do this very consciously, because I think that makes a big difference for us as a global society.
What's next for you now, actually?
Yes, as we have announced, so I'm going into retirement at the end of next year, at the end of this year, and I intentionally decided. So I do not think about it too much right now. Yeah. So when people hear, my colleagues ask me, but what are you going to do? Is actually, I'm very happy not to know. I like sometimes in life the situation where it's a luxury, that it's clear. But when you can allow yourself to say, hey, here I am, but I just don't know what comes next. Yeah. It's for a certain time period. My experience is, if you do that, typically something will show up. something will come up, and then I have, of course, to make up my mind. Do I want? Yes, no. But I really looking forward for a certain time frame where I say, oh, I just don't know. And I hang around.
That sounds like a perfect plan or non-plan, as you sort of framing.
Exactly.
Rochus, thank you so much for having been here. It's been absolutely insightful talking to one of the pioneers of impact investing.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.